Well, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar today and taking some time out of your busy schedule. We've got a great presentation, information-packed and full of wisdom here, hopefully, for you today. It's entitled Extended Enterprise Learning, Is Your Strategy Ready for a Refresh? And put on today by Talented Learning and Cornerstone. And from just a logistics standpoint, we are recording the session. During the session, we'll just take questions right in line. So go ahead and in your question pane, enter in any questions throughout. We'll take them in line if we can. If they're relevant, if they're too deep or something like that, we'll follow up after the webinar to make sure that everybody gets their questions answered. And we're going to have a series of polls through the presentation. When they pop up, we believe in speed polling here, so we'll give you a few seconds and go ahead and interact with that so that we can keep the presentation moving and use it as an opportunity here to see how the audience reflects what we see in the marketplace. And so today's agenda, a refresh on extended enterprise. We'll introduce ourselves in just a minute. A refresh on extended enterprise. You say, what can that really mean? And so a lot's happened in the last few years from learning from just an employee type basis to spreading it out throughout all the areas of your organization that aren't your employees but are critical to your success. And so we'll talk about what that means. Give you a quick brief overview or level setting on what is extended enterprise learning, and then we're going to walk through ways to assess your strategy and your ROI approach and how that rolls down into everything from content to developing content, pricing content, and really leveraging technologies to drive an integrated approach. So this presentation today is for those that really want to think strategic about deploying learning technology across all aspects of your organization, and hopefully you have the right two presenters today to take you through this. John Llamas is the principal consultant at Cornerstone in the Thought Leadership and Advisory Services Group. John is an expert with decades, I won't even say how many decades, but decades of experience in planning and forethought and human capital systems. And we'll let John introduce himself in just 1 second. I'm John Lay. I'm the CEO of Talented Learning, we're an independent research and analyst firm. We study the extended enterprise market. We do research. We publish posts and put on public webinars also that organizations can buy better and implement better, and that's what today's session is all about. Is all about from a content standpoint, is helping you plan better and do better. And so, John, how about you introduce yourself and your organization, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, John. I'm really happy to be with you today, and so you're going to get a double barrel of Johnnies today, and hopefully that, as you said earlier, John, will provide some interesting, hopefully new information. Certainly, our intent is thought-provoking, and we'll go through some, as John said, some of the framework, do some definitions, and then give some examples. So, again, really happy to be here and looking forward to working with you on this.
Great. And Cornerstone, in case someone could possibly not know who you are, maybe you want to give you
sure.
Quick overview. I think that'd be hard to do in today's day and age, but we'll
Well, you never can get the message out too often, and but just in terms of, we kind of know what we're doing here. We've got about 33.5 million users on a global basis out of 3,100 clients. You can see the number of countries we're in, and we are multi-language, and so we really try to be that global provider in a number of fronts. And as John said, we're a leader in cloud-based learning and human capital management. There's a lot of us that are thinking along the lines of, the human HCM is kind of a holdover or a carryover from the ERP days, which were fundamentally financial systems, essentially. And we've started to kind of think along the terms of HCM as human capability management. We think that that's really kind of more to the point. And as a result, we're pioneering some solutions that are going to help organizations realize the potential of the modern workforce. And we need to be very clear, and I think you'll hear the same from John as well, is that in today's connected economy, it really does extend beyond your four walls and your employees. It's going to include your partners, your customers, the ultimate consumer, and increasingly further back up the supply chain to your suppliers. So that's really kind of the target area that we're trying to address, and learning is really core to making that whole connected economy work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think a portion I forgot in the intro, or why this is really relevant, is that it's not like extended enterprise was born yesterday. So this concept of training your non-employees has been around forever. But what's happened is that a lot of organizations took their eye off the ball and or rather focused on just the integrated talent management, or the HCM aspects of the solution, and organizations started to separately in these different parts of the corporation to go out and buy duplicate systems. And so there's a real, as the pendulum always swings back and forth, there's a real opportunity now from technology and capability to bring things back under one umbrella and look more strategically across all of your human capital or capability, and not just in your employees. And so that's where the opportunity is, and that's what we'll talk a lot about today as we go through that. So the first part here is just give you a quick introduction to extended enterprise learning and what that means. And let's just go ahead and see who we have on the line here today, and we'll go from there.
Okay, John, I'll help you out on this. And our first pop-up question is, which of the below best describes your organization's training focus? And we'll have about 15 seconds while this will be up. So select one of the employees, channel partners, customers, all of the above, or other. And if you have other, just go ahead and enter that in the question box.
All right, we got a horse race here of going back and forth. This is perfect, though, as we see this building up. As I said, we'll be fast here, so we'll go ahead and share this out. But you see, we have a nice a nice distribution of organizations that are were attendees that are responsible for all these different areas. And I don't know if that surprises me or not. I think what I have noticed in the marketplace, John, is that the learning professionals are now even being hired by separate business groups. So they're all over the organization now, not just in HR and training. And it looks like our audience aligns with that type of distribution.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that sticks out to me, John, is all of the above. We will probably begin to see that increase, its velocity or its acceleration probably above the others. I think we'll always see employees as a focus. But one of the things that we'll talk about later on today is really having an overarching ecosystem strategy. So that is something that is very germane to how you kind of teed up our discussion today. So I would expect to see that to increase.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, just to level set on corporate extended enterprise. So extended enterprise, I started Talented Learning to study exactly this question. What is extended enterprise? There's so many different definitions and what it can include and not include. But I think at its most basic, extended enterprise means anybody who's not your employee. And if you look at it that way, that opens up a lot of ground, but it could be anybody, as John had mentioned, from dealers or franchisors, partners or prospects or customers or past customers, all those different organizations that interact. But even broader, large segments of the learning technology industry are like member-based organizations, like associations, professional associations that might have 10 or hundreds of thousands of members that aren't their employees. You can't tell them what to do. So they're outside. You have to address them and their learning needs and personas differently, as well as just a whole host of subject matter experts or for-profit training companies or publishers that are taking advantage of cloud and e-commerce technology to sell content as their primary or even their secondary business. And all of those groups combined have the focus of looking outside of their organization. and the differences that exist between employees and external, is really one of the key challenges that prohibits widespread adoption, or at least slows it down, because from an employee standpoint, from a learning management system or a learning technology in general, there's more of a concept of you take assigned content, because of your job or your role or your organization or your location, you have X, Y, or Z regulatory content that you need to take every year, and so that's primarily first base. That's the what most learning management systems start out with and pay the bills with and expand from there. But on the external users, it's very voluntary. They have to perceive value. You could tell them what to do, but there's nothing to guarantee or even hope for that external learners will actually do anything that you tell them to. They have to perceive value and want to do it. And that difference between mandatory and voluntary is really the key difference between managing the different audiences of an organization. And at the crux is the biggest challenge and opportunity of organizations is to embrace that diversity, because external users, they can go anywhere for content. They can buy any software system. They can get training from dozens of organizations for anything they can conceivably want to buy. And so for an organization to attract those type of users, they really have to take a different strategy of honey versus a stick, or carrot versus a stick. And so being able to do the both simultaneously is the opportunity. John, with 3,000 plus clients in every corner of the world, that bought your system for both external and internal, how do you think about managing multiple audiences and really the complexity and the opportunity of that?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And I think one of the things that we thought about from the very beginning is that we wanted to help educate the world. And when you take that kind of perspective, one of the first things you need is you're going to have multiple audiences with different intents, both in terms of the push and different interests in terms of the pool, in terms of what those folks want to get. And so having a system design that allows you to do segmentation, to understand what your audiences are, and we'll talk a little bit later too in terms of segmentation. The ultimate in any kind of marketing sales is segmenting the pitch to a single person. And the whole idea of the new design approaches around software and systems of the personas, the right information at the right time. So having a system that allows you to make those kind of distinctions in terms of content, method of delivery, multiple methods of delivery, capturing not only the activities but the end results of those. Those are the things you need to think about. And in some way, it kind of merges the employee and external into just the learning audience. And by focusing in on the aspects and the attributes of each of them, making sure you've got a system that will give you the tools to do that. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that we look at.
Mm-hmm. And here's a good example here with Tritium.
Yeah, a great example of Tritium. One of our customers on our, not only on our LMS, but also joined it up with their CRM, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But the business issues is that they really needed to develop this continuing education primarily to their customers, which were various companies that are doing HVAC kind of, highly technical machine, taking care of businesses, the environment, et cetera, and pretty sophisticated items that they were doing, and they really needed to improve that customer experience in terms of social mobile analytic. Everybody's got a cell phone, and almost 90% of the U.S. has access to smartphones, et cetera. But also managing that customer and the employee education in one unified platform so that there's a consistency of messaging. So their solution was to come up with this idea of Tritium University and fundamentally going for education anytime, anywhere. And they previously had been based doing instructor-led training And as they tried to transfer that data into the CRM, they really began to see the synergies that they could drive for their company in terms of having all the information in one place, having delivery and measuring the activities and, more importantly, the effects. And so they saw that as one way to continually provide them information for new changes, new training. Are they enhancing the customer experience? And by going with a single system, they really came in, they were able to do it in about 6 months. They achieved their 3 major goals, which was simple, it was global, and it was fast.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they've seen some really dramatic growth in their training enrollments. You can see they've got a single unified digital customer experience, and I think that's really important. It's unified. Again, messaging, same way, look and feel, but it's consistent across all of their arenas. So the content may be different, but the experience of addressing that and going through that content is very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And that helps at the back end in terms of the efficiency aspects and the cost to do this. So it lowers the ROI threshold for that. Biggest thing for them, as they found out as the results started coming, is the analytics, the ability to measure the impact and then make changes as necessary. Big deal for them.
Wow, great. Thanks, John. That's good story. Trevor here asking a question of, what are some examples of external learners in the construction industry? Right, here's one of, when you think about construction, it could certainly be your employers, but you have that concept of contractors. A lot of times, especially on projects or road works or big construction projects where, you staff up, tens or 50,000 contractors maybe over a certain period of time, but then those people finish that project and move on. And here we see with Tritium customers, as another example that would need to take different levels of training. So, just about in every industry, exactly. I found, you're going to have customers and you're going to have training, and in most you're going to have somebody that helps you sell your products and services. So this scenario is really replicated in a lot of different scenarios, every corner of the world, I believe.
Absolutely, for sure.
All right. Well, if that's the case, if everybody's facing the same thing, how can you plan for success, and why do you want to plan for success? And I think the easy answer is by thinking about extended enterprise and about all your audiences, you're truly making that pivot from being an internal cost center to being a strategic, profitable arm of the organization, because you're trying to change behavior and make things happen with those different personas that you identified, and doing that in a way that can be measurable. And because of that, it's a way that you can get a competitive differentiation. If somebody had 2 identical companies, or maybe I'm considering buying 2 different a piece of software from 2 different organizations, and the price is the same, and all things are equal, and one provides all kinds of training and assistance and mentors and discussion forums and guides, and the other one doesn't, it's an easy decision. And so using strategically across your whole organization just isn't about spending money. It's about making a competitive difference for your organization. And just like anything else in business, you can't do that if you're doing it willy-nilly. It really starts with a solid foundation based on planning.
Absolutely, John. So let's get into our second polling question. Does your organization use a different LMS for internal and external learners? And you can see the choices there, and we'll see what our audience comes back to us with.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the questions. Yeah, this is one of the questions I started off Talented Learning trying to figure out, because there's so many different, just so many different organizations, and so many different organizations selling learning technology out there. I just couldn't tell if everybody was trying to do extended enterprise, or there was the possibility that, organizations just targeted, customer service or channel sales, separately with learning solutions. And, what I found is, it's really a mix. Organizations approach it holistically and then also in a very decentralized mode. And, if we look at our, go ahead and share these results, right now you'll see, we have exactly that, but almost encouragingly, 55% taking a holistic approach. That group right now, we can start helping you today. You're probably getting stuff today that's helping, hopefully.
Yeah, and looking at the for now, if we subtract that from the yes, so we're really looking at probably just about a quarter of folks making that difference, and that's understandable. I mean, LMSs have been around for a while. There's there's sunk cost, there's an investment there, and making that transition is not the easiest. And so, depending on the time frame and the the cost situation, the budgets, I could see that begin to migrate. But if it's somebody that's starting out new, you've got to do it out of a single system. That's the way.
Yeah. Interesting. And so, this is really your wheelhouse, John, for decades here. You've been thinking about it. Exactly this. What should organizations be thinking about holistically before they jump into any of this, or what should they be thinking about to set that foundation, on solid rock?
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of things up here. Governance always. I mean, that's always probably the number 1, 2, or 3 lament that I hear back from clients in any aspect of kind of transformational introductions and enablement by technology, is that they get focused on the technology, but they forget that people are involved. And once you get people involved, there's a need to establish governance. But even perhaps before that, that's really kind of the how. You really got to land on the what. What is the strategy? What's the end game that you're trying to get to? And then that'll help define that target. And then you can start doing the planning. And so at this point, the governance comes into place. Measurable implementation, outlining guidance where you're achieving intended results. And, we all know the old adage, if I can't measure it, I can't manage it. And that really is true, both in terms of implementation of these systems, but probably more importantly in the long run, the operations of it. And analyzing and interpreting insights to help drive continuous and sustained improvement. I think that's probably the newest add to it, John, and that, again, speaks to the analytics. Probably a couple other things I would say for that is probably 2 other things that I continually hear is, gee, I wish we paid more attention and understood the importance of change management. That often is really key, and people will get in the midst of it and realize, oh my gosh, we really haven't done a good enough job in preparing and understanding what the reactions are going to be. So again, focusing on people's reaction. And then the last one is, gosh, I really wish we had gotten some external help from some consulting groups that either know how to select these things and how to implement them. It's not something that is done all the time. And yet I'd say a great preponderance of responses I get back is the, oh, gee, I wish if I had to do it over again, I'd have brought somebody in, an expert who could help us guide through this.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Just to pile on, one thing at governance, I think that is relevant with the extended enterprise and really for just adoption, as you were talking about, is because there is multiple groups, there's multiple owners for these different audiences inside an organization. Yeah. It's important to get them in on the thought leadership and the buy-in and, establishing the white lines on the road of, how to interact with a centralized strategy, even though they may have, or they may be, decentralized groups working within that. And so that's one thing about why, I think even though it's a how, it's a critical success factor to get all those groups, in some way communicating with each other in a formalized way and an informal way, so they can share resources and thoughts and move the whole organization together, because the thought really is coming from different sectors, sometimes a lot of different sectors. In large organizations, It might be coming from, no kidding, 30 or 40 or 50 different sectors, in large global organizations. And then the other thing is, because you have those different audiences with those different needs, it's really important to, understand that change management with each audience. So, you're running into it as a top 5 thing that you're hearing from clients, but, with extended enterprise, it's really important to think about the change audience with all the different personas down to that next level because, it's so critical to success. All right.
Yeah, you can't do everything for everybody. You got to prioritize, and that's what governance helps you do.
But why do organizations do this? Why are we even talking about it? Because if you don't have to make people take training, we gave the answer, because it's a competitive advantage. But there, how can you quantify that competitive advantage? And really, there's three different ways that, three buckets I believe that you can find to quantify it. It can be about cost savings. So, for example, if there's a different learning system in the customer service and external channel sales, and for your employees, and for one in Germany and a different one for Australia, and your organization's maintaining those 5 systems, you're duplicating costs and license and infrastructure and maintenance and most likely content and customer support and tickets, and all that resources from IT are all drained in those 5 different directions. So without a doubt, by consolidating and taking a thoughtful strategic approach and bringing things together, you have the economies of scale argument that's always there, and it's valid and it's true. But then there's also the pure practical, the business process side of where you're really getting competitive as an organization. If you can roll out, any organization that rolls out a new product, they only have so long in the marketplace until competitors copy it and make it better and, come up with a different version. And so being able to roll out products quicker, more effectively, hit the ground running for sales and service and your internal sales and your external sales, it's a really important business process that gives you a competitive edge, a palatable competitive edge in the marketplace, as well as just the ability to grow and expand globally and to open up new franchises or onboard new groups or mergers and acquisitions. Doing that better is all part of overperforming for your company. And finally, the last sector that we see a lot of now, especially with extended enterprise, is the opportunities to generate revenue. Not just revenue for your core products, but a complementary stream of revenue. You'll see organizations create complementary certifications or education that go alongside their core product. A SaaS-based computer security company may develop a curriculum that all of their clients can use and sell that curriculum as a complementary product, or sell certifications or expertise, or indirectly sell more by having happy customers renew and expand. And so it's not just about checking a box for compliance, it's about making a big difference. And I know, John, in your shoes, this is all you think about, and really the most strategic organizations, it's all they think about. What are your thoughts on all this and how that works in your world?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, John. I think these are 3 components to the ultimate goal of any company, and that's profit. And profit is really kind of a function of all 3 of those, isn't it? And so even in these cases where you've got increased revenue, there are some real benefits that come somewhat directly, and then some that are indirect. I'll give you an example. For our next kind of client success with First Bank Card, where their idea in terms of approaching here, as John said, was really on the revenue side. So First Bank Card had about 300 partner banks that would sell the credit card that was backed by First Bank. Interestingly enough, as John mentioned, this involved things like certifications and compliance for reporting that they had to prove to the feds that all of the banks that were participating and selling their product had the proper training. And so, you get into the 30,000 employees, but then you've got others that have got to be trained. And so they found themselves at a situation of a lack of reporting or completion and competency. They simply couldn't prove it. And so one of the things that they went to Mark for was exactly this, where they could do not only their internal training for their employees, but for their member employees, and the consistency of that training because of the compliance requirements and reporting needed to be ensured. And this was one way, to your point, John, of developing it once and being able to spread it out. So the efficiency, the scalability was really important. one of the other things that they were able to do is not only did they give that kind of consistency of messaging where they needed to, but they also had the capability to develop custom curriculums to fit those partners' needs. So like we said earlier, it's understanding the audience needs for those and having the ability to not only give the same to everybody, but then differentiate and help their member banks become more profitable as part and parcel taking part in this particular effort. So I think First Bank was really a great example of addressing a multi-variable kind of interest, doing it with a single system, and able to provide that kind of differentiation based on their particular membership clients and what they needed, but still meet a generalized need.
Yep. Wonderful. Cool. Great example. Great example. And so, I'm sure they and everybody else then comes to the same question of, what do we do about content? And, what content do these different personas need and these different audiences need? And, are we currently developing the same content over and over, or rather is there commonality of content across audiences, or does each audience, need their own specific content, or is their own flavor of a common content? And all of those answers or all of those options are things I think we see every day because they're all viable. But the trick is, and we'll talk about it here, is taking it up a notch and planning your content as strategically as you plan your platform. And there's a lot of reasons to do this, to develop once and to deliver to many audiences, certainly from a cost standpoint, but even more importantly from brand and from an extension of best practices standpoint. Really is a lot of horsepower. But before we get into that, let's do another poll quickly.
Yeah, let's do another poll here. So survey 3, does your organization create shared content for internal and external audiences?
Yeah, good question, because we saw from a platform standpoint that, roughly, what we see, 33% were using the same platform for all the audiences. It'd be interesting to overlay that and see how that looks of, whether or not they're, doing that from a content perspective or not. This is one of the biggest, I think, challenges that organizations are struggling with as they, at first it was always the technology, like it was really hard to segment audiences and deliver content to audiences separately. But it seems like the cloud technology, just in general, and putting everything up there has, made that concept of multi-tenancy more common or very common and easy. And so then the next challenge that comes in is, all right, what do we do about content? Because, quite commonly content dwarfs, what an organization spends on the actual platform or infrastructure. And so there's a lot of efficiency. So let's go ahead and share what we have here. So, pretty interesting. 63%, are sharing content for different audiences. That's great. Actually, that's higher than I expected. That's really higher than I expected.
Yeah, I agree.
All right,
I
good.
agree. I think also, John, the idea of creating versus buying is kind of even an additional question here as well. And, when you look at from an extended enterprise, it's the differentiation things that are going to probably matter the most. And typically you're not going to find those as a buy. So you have to build. So your whole question about the efficiency of build it once and deliver it multiple times. And you just bring up, this slide here is really the thing that I think forces the base question is the priority, shared learning needs, the right information to the right people at the right time. And what is that? That's really based on the persona. So in this extended enterprise, in this connected economy, there are roles and niches that have specific goals. They have specific roles to play in that economy. And so understanding what those are and when are the key points, the touch points of learning, when are those going to occur, under what circumstances, to what end. So I think all of those need to be considered. And once you've got that plethora of different competing ideas and needs, Now you can start developing the design that starts out with the messaging. What is it that you're really trying to get at, and making sure that's consistent about the product, the brand, across all of those. And as you get closer to that individual need, that's where you can start beginning to see some of the differentiation, some of the tweaks on the training, but they'll all be consistent in line with what you've already set out as the, as the major theme that you're trying to get across. So I agree with every one of the points you've got there. Moment of need, keep it small, and continually analyze the success of that content.
Mm-hmm. I think to pile on, it's really important to make this distinction that, at Talented Learning, I know we blog about extended enterprise, but how we generate revenue is that we help organizations, figure out and find extended enterprise learning systems and to deploy, to buy and deploy. And out of all of our clients, not once, John, have I seen organizations offer up off-the-shelf content to their extended audiences. They don't do it. They just don't care whether you know how to type or anything else. The only content that they offer up is that content that is proprietary to the organization that you can't get anywhere else. And it's typically about sales process, products, services, how to fix their products, how to service them, and those different audiences of prospects, channel partners that sell your products, your own employees that sell and service and make your products, as well as any customers that are using them throughout all time. That's the commonality that hooks them to your organization, that ties all these. That's the only. If that didn't exist, there would be no reason to have really a centralized strategy. But it's because that the centralized strategy is hinged upon, or really based upon, the most important thing your organization has. It's intellectual capital and products and services and its brand. That's what makes this whole, we should just stop the presentation there. I think that's the most important.
I'm with you, John. I think that's the golden egg right there. Everything to divvy that up. That's great. Yeah.
All right. So, so if you have to, you have this proprietary content, this golden egg, the knowledge that nobody else has, and you're putting out to those, external audiences, do you do it for free or do you charge for it? And, how do organizations do that, and why do they do it? It's another thing that I look at and try to categorize for each organization, but I see organizations doing both strategies simultaneously. You can do one or the other, or, have different combinations. But, when it's free content, it's typically because consuming the content by those various personas is going to actually impact other business measures that can be measured. So from attracting more customers, or converting more prospective customers into customers, or getting customers to renew more often, getting customers of one product to buy a complementary product, all to call support less, which has costs. All of those have benefits to the organization, and just to give away the content and have them consume it is so in their best interest that they go ahead and do that for free. Mm-hmm. But then, just as commonly, there's a way that you can make money off that content. So sure, you maybe want to get base content, but then there's the concept of certifying partners. So you see a lot of, Microsoft or Dell, or, any software or enterprise software company has, gold and silver and bronze level partners that have to take different levels of training and certification, and as a result they have different libraries of products and services that they can sell, and they use that as a huge revenue generating that just supports their business, or that complementary content that I saw. And so organizations, I think, generally come to grips with whether it's about adding a complementary stream is the goal, or whether the goal is to improve and the core business to be more competitive. And that typically is what drives the content pricing strategy in my experience. What are you and your clients seeing? Is that in line or no?
John, I say that is absolutely in line, and it's one of the toughest decisions to be made, and it really does require a lot of analysis. And again, I think also a choice, and it's cost, revenue, it's income, but ultimately I think it comes down to what's the value proposition of taking that particular path. And, where you're going to spend the money, that really is, to your point, a business decision about how they want to complement or supplement what it is that they're doing. And it's all over the basis, but I agree with you. I think those decisions are generally made along the lines that you've laid out here. That seems to be a consistent.
If you're an organization and you're just thinking about, and that's why you're on the presentation here today, and you're just thinking about extending learning out into those areas, an easy first step, as you said, it's better to start small and keep on growing than it is to try to build the Taj Mahal on your first try here. And so, leaving the e-commerce aspects out of it, as a first step in your journey is, a pretty smart and easy thing to do. And that really takes a lot of the technical and a lot of complexities out of the workflows and allow you at least, start targeting those different personas in a measurable way. And then you can always add on the 4 as a, second phase and third phase down the road as a way to grow and expand the solution. And I see that as a common path a lot of organizations are following.
Absolutely. I mean, you see the introduction of agile thinking, agile, start out in software, but it's being applied to all different activities within business. And the idea of get it out fast, making sure that it's minimally viable product, you hear that all the time, or process, and go from there. Get something that's usable and learn as you go. You're not going to get it right, and that's been the fallacy of waterfall development for years. It's just you design. You're not going to get it right the first time, but get something out there, get it in the hands, get the experience, get the feedback, and make quick changes so that it continually improves. It's all about continuous improvement. Mm-hmm. Give you a great example of something where the objective was to do a couple of things. One is to make additional revenue, but there was a strategic gain out of this with this next client, the MSC software, where they really had some very, very technical software that did simulations for manufacturing and other kinds of instances. Lots of physics, high level of training that was necessary to really maximize the impact of the software by their customers. A lot of it had been cumbersome, expensive training, both for MSC and its customers. It was done generally 3 or 4 or 5 days. Somebody had to travel, and it just was not scalable. And it was beginning to impact the business, not only in terms of having the right trained and quality trained people out using their software. The fact that it was so difficult was precluding them from adding new features to the software to make it even more effective, because they were lagging on that. So they really needed to come up with a solution, and going with online delivery using a product, EXE, they were able to do that, and they cut down the training time. They cut down, obviously, the ancillary things of having to pull people together, send them where all that expense, and if they could do it online. They really saw a lot of returns in terms of the speed and quality for the product development and the time to market, because they had a much better client group out there who understood what they were doing. So the solution gave them on-time delivery where possible. Something we talked about earlier, quick and less cumbersome to develop and deliver the training, because they knew what they needed to do. They could put it together and really send it out to all of their customers. And they scaled for different levels of companies and regions. Some very key results, again, increase the delivery and the participation. The second bullet you see on the results is really something they were very excited about. It ultimately generated $200,000 incremental dollars revenue the first full year, increased that by 50% in the second year, and that continues to increase year over year. So they're getting that benefit of a new stream of revenue into the company. They're meeting demands of the market for those that are using their product. They are able to cater it to very specific requirements. And it also created that community of clients and organizational innovation. And all those interactions together have been able to help them, again, add complexity or add new capability to the software that they might not have otherwise. So bottom line, it allows them to continue to sell the software. So that's the strategic gain, as well as the year-to-year annual increase in a new revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
So they hit it on all cylinders on this one.
Yeah, and generating $300,000 a year and growing from there is nothing to snub your nose at. That's some serious revenue that it will dwarf the
That's
cost.
some real coin there.
That's some real coin that dwarfs the cost of any application to support that for sure. And so that's why they do that. So great story. All right, we're right on time, which is John and I get to talking sometimes, and time goes. So we're doing good here. Right? Keep to a schedule. Entering into the last section here. And so let's talk about the technology. This is, I always want to, talk about how strategy is my favorite point, and it's certainly important as we've been talking about all day today. But it's hard not to get excited about the technology that's behind it, because that's always new. So, but real quick, let's do our last poll here in our last section, and then we'll get into our top 8 features that we need.
Okay, so over the next few years, will your organization offer more or less training to external learners?
Yeah, so when you guys are sitting around planning, your yearly budgets or just your yearly strategy, what's the discussion? Is it, let's keep on going as it is, or, we really need to step up our focus here on these external organizations? What this audience, what's the flavor or what's the feeling inside your organization for things like that? So we'll see how people are coming along here. Well, it's holding pretty steady, so we'll go ahead and close that out. And you can see that, basically everybody thinks it's going to be more inside the voting. And so I don't know if that's a result of this presentation, John, but there's a good chance.
We're moving it, buddy. We're
moving the needle. I humbly believe that. All right. So what are these 8 different areas that are really important to extended enterprise learning? I could do, and I do presentations and webinars and even whole day sessions on exactly the requirements and the areas of requirements that are important. But we just want to take it up a notch, and just some things that have been solved or evolved since a lot of people may have bought a system. Like if you haven't bought a new learning management system in the last 3 or 5 or 10 or more years, then the market's a whole lot different than the last time you put your nose to the grindstone to understand learning technology, and some things have gotten a whole lot better because instead of deploying solutions that are on-premise primarily and need servers and IT and all kinds of firewalls and headaches, everything has moved into the cloud, or most things have moved into the cloud in learning technology, and that's removed a lot of the technical barriers. It's introduced new capabilities and really has made learning be one of the fastest growing segments in the software industry. And some things that are really great now is just the concept of analytics, of being able through normal analytics of course progress and completion type things and exception reports and who has and who hasn't taken, completed, started, finished training. That's all there, and that's always been there. But really the next layer that gets there is that through EXE API and just modern cloud technology, you can track anything that a learner does, from how long they're on this or that, and where they click from here or there, and where they came into and where they left the learning management system, and take all that individually and run trends by group or job or role or persona like we talked about, and gives you tremendous data to prove that what you're doing is working or not working, and all of that being integrated into core financial systems. So that's like every day. In the industry 20 years ago, that would be something that 1 out of 20 companies would ever get to a point that even approach close to that. And now it's all organizations are striving for that, and including collaboration. And everybody is looking at Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or the equivalent. You're used to doing that. You're used to the method of connecting with folks and asking questions and commenting and liking and sharing and adding to the conversation, or just lurking about, reading the conversation. Well, all that same technology is now integrated into the learning environment at a course or at a platform level. But all of it can be separated from a segmentation standpoint. And so even though you're sharing content, you can't necessarily mix audiences. You don't want customers from client A to be able to perhaps interact with customers from client B. You don't want your customers from client C seeing compliance items in your library for your employee audience. And so the ability to have different areas for these different audiences so they can do their own thing, yet have the commonality to share content and share integrations, and sometimes not share integrations of CRM on one part of the organization and HR integrations on another part, or a single sign-on. All of that has really been solved, or is well on its way to being solved. That was one of the reasons why organizations couldn't deploy out to different audiences previously, and even in the introduction of e-commerce to both individuals and organizations. So here are 4 things that are really evolved here in the last 10 years that are really just amazing and on par with other areas of social media and the world as you know them today outside of learning management. What do you think? What's your favorite one, John?
I think for me, John, it's the analytics. It's the thing that we're inundated with data, and now we're becoming inundated with information, and sometimes less is more. And so using the analytics to do a couple of things. One, everything that you said in terms of just how's the system being used, what's the click-throughs, where are the stumbling blocks, all those are real important. But where the power really starts to come in for us as I start thinking about it is the merging of the impact of those things, merging sales data to the training, merging the number of calls, the type of calls, the severity calls to a customer service desk, and understanding where those things are and what can you do to forestall that. Can you put out training that will, cut out a third of the calls that are coming into the help desk, because it's easily put onto a video that can be shared and the customers and whoever. So understanding the impact on sales or service, the delivery side of it, not just the activities within the training. I think that's where the real power is. And then that starts to inform collaboration. Do you have more of it, less of it? Do you bring it up? It'll inform how effective your e-commerce systems and segmentation. My God, that really is where the analytics can help you refine it. Again, tune it down to that customer of one.
Boy, the industry is so different than it was. It used to just be like, let's just get that, go take this training, and now it's it's sophisticated, and there's a whole skill set here to driving this off and driving this to be successful. But one of those things is just this concept of a learner-focused interface, and that's a big mouthful word, but historically LMSs were originally developed for administrators to manage compliance training. A lot of times learners never even touched the system. It was just an administrative system. They weren't designed to touch it. It was just to track it in the background. And so,
right,
you would have 10 people or 20 people in your organization using it, not 20,000. And so, you can afford to train those 20 people to use it effectively. But now that to be successful, learners have to be attracted, use, and come back to that system time and time again. They need to be the most important. And that's really, there's been a real shift in just the look and the feel and the usability and bringing the tools that learners want versus here's your required training, take it by this date, which was really previous. And so they really look, right. For lack of a better word, LMSs are truly beautiful now, as opposed to being the ugly ducklings they were for so long. And of course that extends out not just to using it on your laptop, but using it on any device and going from device to device. So from your laptop to your phone and back to your laptop, and keeping track of your content, and really just making your mobile devices an extension of your learning environment, just like they are in your real life or your social life are too. But for the sake of time, we'll go to what I think is probably the biggest one here, and
Yep.
From that's different than you would see in you just wouldn't see this ever, almost never in an employee type application. Tell us about Salesforce.com, John.
So Salesforce.com is really, I think, grasping and holding on to the understanding that it is an extended enterprise, that it is a connected economy, and that what we've been able to do is provide a native development of an application, the LMS, into Salesforce.com, and that is a great repository for all of the information that, what the training was, what the cost is, but also it marries it up to service and sales results. And again, the impact. This is where it all resides. And just think of how easy it is, how much easier it is to have everything in one place, do the analysis, to be able to create communities of interest, that collaboration, and be able to respond back and forth to your partners, your customers, and have that available in one place so that you can do that kind of analysis and make those kind of changes. It's a phenomenal capability, but it's a recognition that all of this needs to be looked at in terms, and you said it earlier, John, it's an ecosystem, and so we have to have a view into it, to interject, and to deliver and to withdraw the kinds of information that we need out of it, and that's what Salesforce.com, the merger of CRM to learning, does.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that challenges the expansion of extended enterprise from an HR training function is that if you grew up in the HR training world, a lot of this seems alien and different because it's very easy to spend your whole career not logging in or even knowing what Salesforce.com is, but what organizations do of every size, from my organization to global behemoths. They track all of their sales opportunity, all their prospects, all their customers, what they do and don't do, and how much they're buying, and all the fiscal and business aspects of their audiences. And they track that in very great sophistication because, it's the lifeblood of the organization of making or losing money. And so you're bringing all that lifeblood of core business and performance and persona data together with the learning environment. And wow, that's powerful. That's more powerful than anything has been in learning technology. And just the last one here, maybe number two or number one could be switched or any of them, but just the concept of moving things smaller. Instead of taking a course, physically by putting yourself in a seat on the hopes that you might need that information 2 years from now, that whole concept of moving to lifelong learning in smaller chunks based on what you need, what you're interested in, what your job is, what you need at that moment in time. And getting that so you can consume it, share it, communicate with it, collaborate with it. That's the new mode of learning, not these big 2-hour SCORM courses or 1-hour webinars.
Yeah, exactly, John. And there's, we could do a whole nother session just on microlearning itself, the things that it does, the thing that it doesn't do. Sometimes I run across situations where, here's a new hammer, microlearning. I just see a world of nails. Well, it's not. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of nails out there, and this is the best thing that you can use to get started and learn from. But it's got to be like any tool. You've got to use it under the right circumstance.
All right. I spoke too soon about us not getting carried away with our talking. So how about a quick 30 seconds here on zero, and we'll wrap it up for everybody as we're sliding out of pace.
We'll do. I'm glad we got here because technology was kind of our last theme, and Zero Motorcycle is electric motorcycles. Cool. So something that we know every day, but electric, very, very different. They are a global company. They're based out of California, but they have a lot of partners and resellers throughout the world. And, in any situation that you get there, you've got to have training. In their case, they wanted to train not only the sales folks who had a high turnover, so how do you do that efficiently, effectively, as well as training the service technicians of their partners so that they can do well and fix these motorcycles. They're very, very different. They had a situation where customers would come and knew more about electronic motorcycles than some of the, some of their partners. So how did they address that? They did this exactly through extended learning, and you can see some major, major improvements in terms of dealer staff. They had to deal with the idea of incentive and, again, tackled that in many of the ways that you and I talked about. So,
all right.
Great solution.
Cool. And so to wrap all that up, thanks for everybody for sticking around for the full hour. That was a lot of information and case examples. Thanks, John, for pulling and sharing those case studies and your advice on all these different areas and analysis. If we did anything today, what we hope that we were able to do is just really elevate your understanding of why external audiences are important to an organization and to the lifeblood, and really help you understand that maximizing that in a centralized way based on strategy, planning, and foundation is a way to really elevate your organization, elevate your own career, elevate the standing of your training and development process, and turn things in from a cost to a profit center. And it's a lot more fun being on the profit side because you're doing things that everybody's excited about from a strategic standpoint. And extended enterprise learning is a great way to get there from an HR training and the type of persona that would listen to a call like that is, it's a great opportunity to do that. And it's all based on really predicting and measuring and constantly improving and doing that in an agile way, so that you start small and grow through success, through measured success. And so hopefully we gave you some tools and strategies here today to do that. Thank you, John. Any last parting thoughts?
I think you said it all there. I think we covered a lot of ground, and hopefully folks found food for thought.
All right. Thanks, great. Thanks, everybody, for logging in. What we'll do is we'll package this video up and send it as a follow-along so you can access the on-demand versions. Thanks very much for attending, and we hope to see you on the next installment of the Talented Learning webinar series. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We'll follow up any questions afterwards if we didn't get to them in our dialogue. Thank you.